the bottom one.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's not a big presentation, so I might have to read. Okay, so what we're focused on a number of things. I mean, for the most part, creating a co-working community, right? So we've already sort of started this in San Francisco, trying to get people together to work. Awesome. Cool. In the city, so how do we actually extrapolate this? Like, you know, last year with BarCamp, we were able to put together a bunch of practices that other people could then imitate. How do we do the same thing for the co-working stuff? Knowing that different communities have different opportunities, different financial situations, different sizes of communities, different affordances, and so on, right? Well, so first of all, the opportunity that we see for co-working is to enable individual workers to be fitter, happier, and more productive, right? And to find a way of actually supporting that, getting that out there. That's our opportunity, right? So first of all, we have some sort of assumptions. Yes, sir.
Chris, can I just make a distinction in terms of terminology?
Absolutely.
We're dealing with co-working in terms of a space for individual practitioners as opposed to distributed work of a group towards a specific goal.
Right.
Just
Yeah. So that was sort of an important thing that allowed us to break off, first of all, right? So instead of doing distributed work, it was more like, what can you do locally in your own local communities, whether it's San Francisco, New York, Paris, wherever you are, and you want to have a space that's a little bit more robust than a cafe, you know, and you have certain, I don't know, resources to make use of, right? So first of all, some sort of assumptions. We all are independently wired or wireless. Typically, you know, a lot of us, as we are right now, we have laptops we can bring around with us. We bring everything with us. We have digital cameras. We're very digitally equipped. We don't need to go to an internet cafe where there's these big-ass honking monitors and desktops because we bring it with us. Second, we thrive in social environments. While we can work at home by ourselves as independents, we gain a great deal of benefit from working amongst other people. And though many of us are independents or work for ourselves or work for small companies, you know, working in a corporate environment kind of kills us. Like, you know, like indoor lighting on outdoor plants doesn't work. Second and third, we like variety in our work and coworkers. So we like to do a lot of different things. We like to experiment. We like to have people and different influences coming into our lives and going, right? So this is why it's nice to work in a cafe, because you have all kinds of crazy people coming and going. You don't get that so much in a controlled corporate environment where everybody has to have a security badge. Fourth, our collective output is qualitatively better and more interesting than if we're working on our own, at home, or in remote environments where we don't have the benefit of other people's minds, thinking, experiences, and so forth. Finally, together we can actually lower the cost of being independent. So whether that's buying into group healthcare, whether that's ascertaining more furniture for a space, whether that's buying a big table that we can all share from, it's much better to share the cost amongst a group of people that are all benefiting from it. So what are the basics of the community model? Well, there's sort of some core tenets that make this stuff actually work. The distributed co-working group talked about the issues of trust and reputation and things like that. Well, how do you go about actually creating a bar that sets expectations at a certain level, right? So that you actually can avoid or help mediate or mitigate bad actors, right? Well, one thing, start with the community of giving, where everybody actually wants to give as a first order. In fact, by giving, somehow you actually end up getting more back. A very much P2P style model. Next, reciprocal accountability. There are two ways to look at this. First of all, if you're going to leave your stuff out openly, as a lot of us have been doing throughout BarCamp, you know that people are not going to steal your stuff because, you know, you're putting yourself out there, other people are putting themselves out there, you're reciprocally accountable. And finally, from a productivity standpoint, Brad Newberg, who is sort of the creator of the co-working idea, offers this example where he'll tell a coworker in the co-working space about certain deadlines that he's imposing himself as sort of a daylight. He'll be like, hey, I got to get these things done by Friday. On that Friday, that coworker will come to him and say, hey, Brad, you guys, you know, you get those things done. And it's up to Brad to own up to whether or not you did or not. So it's kind of a useful model in that sense where you're holding each other accountable without even having a lot of pressure on each other. Finally, mechanisms for actually showing off trust, right? So there's this social networking site called SciWorld, which has these completely meaningless ways of showing that you value someone else or you like someone else. They're called acorns, and you give them away. They have no value, and yet they're wildly popular, right? So if there's some way in this co-working community to say, you know, this person did a great job for me, they painted my house, they made sure that I didn't forget my keys or whatever, I'm going to give them some small token to show that they're a good person over time. That actually is something that can create good social infrastructure and trust by showing it off instead of hiding it away or having security mechanisms to try to that distrust the members of the community. So how do we actually grow this thing out? You know, if we can actually establish sort of this trust-based community, well, how do we get it out there? Well, first of all of this is going to be open and wiki engineered. So just like BarCamp, it's going to be available for everyone under an open license. You can come in, you can add to it, you can edit it, you can take it, you can build a business off it if you want to, go for it. It's not hierarchical and nodal. So there can be multiple co-working opportunities happening in the same place. It could be a physical place, could be a number of other things, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then obviously lots of communication and implicit trust network. So you're giving away as much as you can. You obviously trust those people who are in that network to give back to you. And then finally that it's rhizomatic and interpollinating. What I mean by that is that these co-working initiatives can spring up both locally as well as elsewhere because of our network, right? Because of the internet. So that someone in Boston knows someone who's moving to San Francisco can actually recommend that they go to co-working and become a member of that community, and then the San Francisco community can actually grow by now touching a whole community that hadn't been involved with before. So in that way, it's sort of interpollinating. And BarCamp is very similar to that, where people have been at BarCamps elsewhere who are coming here and elsewhere. Okay, so we have, this is kind of like where we ended up, you know. Requirements. There's certain social, physical, and systematic or systemic and IT requirements for this stuff to work. Did you want to talk about that, Rich, a little bit?
Well, I just on the social and physical, I think we kind of hit on the social.
Mm-hmm.
On the physical, we sort of went through two different models of how we could do this in a house at various different locations and what kind of thing we need. And I think that's really more of a blocking type of discussion. We went through what would you need each place, what would be provided, what would you bring. And then the systemic and the IT, though, it was the sort of the juice of this whole effort, the thing that makes it franchisable in that rhizomic way. And that is maybe things that we would develop that would make that a key element that we found about some of the other group is essentially a